Do swimming pools need automation? Well, I guess this comes down to your definition of automation and also your expectations of function for this swimming pool. So, there's two things that come to mind right away for automation. One refers to the filtration pump and the schedule that it runs, and the other refers to chemical automation because such a thing does exist, though not super common on the residential level. So, what if you just want like the whole package here? Automation of everything. Well, you're going to need an automation panel, a brain essentially to run all of the pool equipment to, and then you can control that. And the control of the actual interface is going to come down to options of the model of automation system that you choose. The typical options are going to be a wired in digital keyboard that you have to, or a keypad that you have to walk over and interact with, a wireless version of the same thing, which you mount in a more conveniently located place. You might even have the option of like a wireless fob, which could float around in your pool, which has buttons that you can interact with. And then finally, the one that really everybody wants is just want to control it with your phone. Get an app, presumably, and then control the pool functions with your phone. That's what I think most people are after when they're talking about automation. And to that extent, I don't even believe they're really talking about chemical automation when they ask the question about automation. I just want to control the pool with my phone? How do I do that? And the primary way of doing that is you get an automation system that's, like Wi-Fi enabled, or it has an Ethernet cable run to it, and there's an app that you download from the manufacturer of the equipment, that brand that you've purchased, and that enables you to log in and you can control the pump schedule, the speed. If you have a heater, you can turn it on and off, adjust the temperature. You can connect to the lights in your pool and turn them on and off, turn different colors, that kind of thing. And if you have other pool functions, peripheral pool functions, pool cover, a waterfall, other features that you have enabled through automation and motorized valve actuators, for example, then you could control all of that through the app. If you want to do that through the app, you need to buy an automation system, a main panel. Like, it's a peripheral device that a basic swimming pool doesn't even have. A basic pool is a pump, a filter, maybe a heater if you're lucky. Pretty much that's it. Maybe a salt chlorinator, fairly common. So the way you work with that equipment is you walk on over to where it's located and you press the buttons on it. And it's as simple as that. And here's kind of a small takeaway. Let's say you don't have a super fancy pool. Not everybody does. You bought a variable speed pump because that is common now. It's a requirement by the Department of Energy that you have to have a variable speed pump, or a pump that meets an efficiency standard that very few non-variable speed pumps can meet. And it has a digital interface that you interact with and set, the pump speeds and the times of day that you want the pump to be running. And you can set it for the whole week and you press enter. And it just is going to continue running that unless there's some sort of power outage. So in that sense, you don't actually need a peripheral automation system in order to control that function. That digital keypad is built right in, and they're intended to stand alone and not require an automation system in order to run through a filter. And even a heater itself can more or less be manually operated. Like, most people aren't constantly adjusting the temperature on the heater, unless perhaps if you had a shared hot tub in your system, but that's the minority versus what I'm talking about right now. So you could have a static operation on your heater, like a manual bypass, which you have preset, or maybe no bypass at all. The heater's just in series with your pump filter heater back to the pool. You set your schedule through the digital interface of your pool pump, and you actually don't need any other automation control. You kind of set it and just forget it, right? Because it's going to continue to run. It's going to run that weekly schedule that you've programmed in there. And if you've programmed it properly and adequately for your pool and all the different features and equipment that your pool has, it's just going to do its thing and your pool's going to stay clear. And other than going and making sure there's not like a bunch of leaves in the strainer basket that you should clean out, you don't need more automation control over it. The lights for your pool will have some sort of manual, light switch or something like that somewhere. And let's say it's already convenient to you. You don't really need to control that with your phone. So where would be the benefit of installing an automation system for you? You're really already getting an automation system with this 24-hour digital built-in timer that the pool pump comes with these days. So to a certain extent, you're already automated. So what if you want to control that with your phone and or use chemical automation? These are the things in which there's no way around it. You need a peripheral automation system to control that. Even something like a salt chlorinator. That's a tricky subject right there that a lot of people get hung up on. It used to be that there was a mechanical clock timer, and that would control the on and off schedule for your pool pump. And then you would tie the power to your salt chlorinator off of one of the relay legs for that. And so the salt chlorinator would only get power when the pool pump gets power. Nice and easy. And it's actually really important because the salt chlorinator develops hydrogen as part of its function, and it needs flow in order to do that. And the flow is just the flow mechanical sensor is just a tine. It's a piece of metal. A piece of hair could foul it, and you could erroneously be sending flow signals to the system. It's generating chlorine under a no flow situation. We had a bunch of those back 30 years ago when the systems first came out, and let's say it doesn't end well if you generate hydrogen in an enclosed PVC pipe. So now, with a modern variable speed pool pump, you upgraded, you no longer need that mechanical timer to control the on off of the pool pump because that's controlled through the digital interface. And now you just have a live, constantly electrical supply direct to the pool pump. It's no longer on and off. So how do you control that power to the salt cell? And there's a couple different ways, electrically speaking, you can do it, like a current detecting relay, a relay that only turns on when there's a certain amount of current being drawn by the pool pump, because otherwise the pool pump's receiving power, but it's not drawing current yet because it's just sitting there. It's not actually operating. As soon as it starts operating, it starts to draw current. The relay detects the current draw and is the contact point for a new switch to close, and that enables another circuit, which would be the salt chlorinator in this case, to turn on. That's the way electrically you can build something like that. But most people would just handle this through automation, and that's one of the main reasons why you might need an automation panel, is just to control the salt cell itself in relation to a pool pump, which now receives constant power versus the old one, which was on and off through the mechanical timer. Fortunately, each manufacturer has come out with a line of different automation systems, and all of them have a real entry-level system. And don't worry, really entry-level means most of the pools. Like the top-level ones are crazy, 16, 32 variable speed pumps. Like, who's got 32 variable speed pumps? This is bananas. That would be enough for a couple of city blocks worth of pools. So the average person with the average pool would totally benefit from that entry-level aftermarket automation system that each manufacturer offers. So check that out. And that's going to enable you to run a variable speed pool pump. It's going to enable you to run a light in your pool, and it's going to enable you to run a piece of peripheral equipment like a pool heater, something like that. And that will be full control, not on and off, but full control of temperature if you stay within brands. So like if you have one brand of pump, filter, heater, automation equipment, you can control the heater actual temperature. If you have like pump, filter, automation from one brand and then a different brand of pool heater, not all of them have full compatibility. In fact, it's quite often there's not full compatibility, and as a result, you will be utilizing a high voltage relay. You can provide power to the circuit and you can turn off power to the circuit. So you technically have control over this piece of you have automation control over this piece of peripheral equipment, a heater in this case, but in reality you don't really have control. You only have on-off functionality, and if you want to change the temperature, you're gonna have to, or if you had a pool and spa and you wanted to change these settings, you're gonna manually walk over, press these buttons like a caveman. Who wants to do that? So you get an automation system, and there's, as I said, a couple of interfaces. Primarily, you just get the app and you control it through your phone, and the entry-level systems for automation are very comprehensive. Most swimming pools would basically be able to control all the stuff you have from that very most, or that entry-level most automation package offered from the equipment manufacturers. So you don't need automation. You don't need it for filtration once you have a variable speed pool pump, because you're just going to program it through there. You might need it for controlling peripheral equipment like a salt chlorine cell. But the primary thing that you would want to use automation for chemical control I don't know another way that you can have or offer chemical control for a swimming pool without a full suite automation package. That's kind of like the top of the line stuff. Most of the automated pools out there don't include chemical automation. Why would that be? Well, the main reason why is it's not always a benefit to the pool owner, depending on what you're trying to do here. If you're trying to go hands off, I don't want to touch my pool. If you don't want to touch your pool, you hire a pool company that comes and takes care of it for you. Because if you say, no, I'm just going to automate everything. I'm a tech guy, I'm just going to automate it. The problem is it's not quite at the point yet where you can automate everything to a hands-off level. Right now, let's say you didn't have any automation. If you knew what you were doing with chemicals, you would once, maybe twice per week, walk out, test your water, evaluate the results, maybe make a correction, add a little bit of liquid chlorine to the pool and bump up the levels. Bada bing, we're done for the week. That's pretty much it. Like 15 minutes once to twice a week if we count scooping the leaves, maybe a quick vacuum of the pool. If you go to a chemical automation system, first of all, it's not automated. The first thing you need to do is you still need to go out and you need to manually test the water, just like we talked about before. But now, instead of just like evaluating the results and making the correction, you take your results and you go over to the automation system and you compare your results to what the automation system's telling you. And what you're checking for is the calibration of the automation system. One of the weaknesses to chemical automation as it exists in the modern day is the calibration of the instrumentation. It's something that needs to be constantly checked and revisited to make sure that the system is not misinterpreting the chemical values in your water and adding way too much acid, and you come outside and you check the pH and your pH is like 6 and it's like, whoa, what's going on? It's like a lot too acidic, and it just could be an instrumentation error, and the system's smart, but it's not really smart, so it just keeps dumping acid in from this erroneous reading that it's getting. Somebody's got to monitor that. That's somebody's you. So already you're not hands off. You spent this money on chemical automation. You wanted less interaction. And I argue that a lot of times you just end up, doing the same work, if not more, and more complicated and technical work. You got to refill the chlorine and acid tanks. You got to check the calibration. You got to replace hoses when they start to leak. Like there's it's not a hands-off system. That's the bottom line here. And if you're really after hands-off, you have to hire a company, a service company to come in. It's a huge part of the pool industry, service. That's a huge, probably the biggest part of the pool industry is all the service workers out there doing exactly that, taking it out of your hands so that you don't have to. I wish we were at the point where we had these totally sweet chemical automation systems that were hands-off. Once you install them, they're great. They run for a year. Then you just give them a once-over, be like, yeah, no, everything's good here. We're not quite there yet. Maybe we'll get there one day soon. I'm not sure. We're not there yet. So pools don't need automation. It's not a requirement. And if you have a variable speed pool pump, heck, you basically have automation of the filtration system already. If you want to control the functionality of your pool through your phone, you do need to explore like some sort of peripheral brain system, an automation panel. But there are many grades of them, like entry level, middle of the line, and like the full suite, ones that are like for the super, super fancy pools. If you've got a super fancy pool, there's a ton of great options available to you. But for most people, the very entry level ones are going to be more than adequate for controlling all of the features that your swimming pool has. If you found this information helpful, please be sure to like this video and subscribe to my YouTube channel. And you can check out my website, swimmingpoolsteve.com.